topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Everybody, and welcome to Triversity Talk. How happy are we that it finally stopped raining? My gosh, it's been raining like for 40 days and 40 nights, and I don't know about you, but it certainly affects my mood. And I saw the sun today, and I'm like, what the heck is that? So I'm thrilled to have everybody here with us this evening. Our guest tonight, sometimes I talk about a few other things before I start the show, but I'm very excited about our guest tonight. This person is an unbelievable friend, a really talented performer, writer, artist, LGBTQ advocate, transgender advocate, does radio shows, hosts so many things, comedy, and you can't believe all of this is in one person. But the irony of my guest tonight is when I met this person, I knew her as Fran. That's how I knew her. And around July of this year, Fran transitioned to Frank, who Fran had been before. Okay, so it was Frank to Fran to Frank. What a journey. And you know what? I have to let my guest speak because it's an incredible journey of someone that I consider a brilliant, talented, and is that rare combination of left brain and right brain, which I never totally understood, but Frank will explain all of that to us. So how does that affect our creativity? How does that affect our gender? And at the end of it, how do we identify? So please put your hands together for Frankie Sisco.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for what a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, it's all true.
I know, but it's so nice to hear that once in a while. It reminds you or reminds each of us of all the different things we are to people.
Right. And as you know, here's the deal. The things we are can change. The things we are can be fluid.
They should change, right? Certain things you don't want to change, like your love of your family, your love of your friends, your love of your most important passions and things. You want that intensity to keep up.
Right.
But you may not love you may love your career, but you may not. You may want to change that. Certain of your hobbies, you may have too many. Like you said, as you would say in those different things, I thought of myself as, say, a Jacqueline of all trades. now a Jack of all trades.
Now you're Jack and Jacqueline of all trades. And by the way, there's always room for more because I didn't even get into like the subcategories of the art,
like films and books and stuff.
There's just so much there.
Part of that, honestly, comes from being. Some people would categorize it as ADD or ADHD, but not in a bad way. I think in a good way.
They need to put a label on it.
Yeah, I perceive attention deficit syndrome. The benefits of that are not being so focused on one thing that you ignore the rest of the world passing by. And I am honest that I feel so compelled in my life to pursue so many different things because we only have, 90 years, 100 years, if we're lucky, right? And
This is true.
It's so important, I think, and I know for myself that in some of those years gone by when I wasn't as active with pursuing filling each day, each week, month, year, as much as I could with people, with love and with creativity, that I think of those years as wasted. In fact, today I'm readying a book for a printer, self-publishing a poetry and song book.
Oh,
It has
fabulous.
400 poems and songs. So in the last that I've written. So in the last couple of days, I've been realizing that I had other poems in another little book, or a box here and there. And so
Another box of
I've been
stuff.
typing them in, and some of these go back, many of these go back 50 odd years, 50 some years. And so as I'm reading some of these poems and editing, not even editing them, just reading them, importing them into the file that's going to go to the printer, I realized some things about myself didn't change, like from those poems that I wrote before. And then some things are not as important now that they once were. And I think that when you get involved in a lot of different activities, it's a way also to memorialize your life. So
Absolutely.
if you look at, I've done a couple of documentaries. One, I guess my favorite is called Happy Trans
Happy
Girl Like
trans
Me.
girl like me. Yeah.
And that's where I met you, was at the Golden Door Film Festival that was at.
Absolutely. Right.
So, I'm so glad that I have that, because that really memorialized that not all 12 years, but for 12 years I was living as a female.
Right.
Full time. It wasn't like I was cross-dressing. I was really into it. I was on hormones. I grew breasts. I that's how I was to everyone around me. Whereas before that, for the 50 some odd years before that, I was cross-dressing. So with some people, they would know me as Frank. Some people, they would know me as Fran. Some people knew me both ways. It was a lot to keep up and keep in my head.
Now we're kind of back to both ways.
Yeah, so now it's right.
So now back to Frankie and Fran again. When I sent your stuff to my PR person, Jimmy texted me and I said, I'll explain, but it's interesting because like you've come full circle, which is,
I know they say I did some research on this before. I didn't do it as a barometer on whether I would go ahead with it or not, but I had been having these thoughts in my head that, whoa, I've been going 12 years. That's a long stretch for doing anything in my life.
Right.
And it's not as adventurous as it had been in the beginning. And that's understandable, because when I first transitioned, I was like a teenage girl, going out all the time.
You were going out to like Edelweiss and all of those.
Yeah, I was doing all that. That's right.
Yeah,
and this is my opportunity to live full time everything that I only dreamed about, in the other parts of my life, or discoed about or clubbed about. And so I found that I think the statistic is something like only around 3% of people, some people call it detransitioning. Like if they go from male to female, back to male, like I did, into male, there's only a 3% chance that this is going to be successful, that I'll probably end up going back to trans female, or
so wait, hold up
I don't know, maybe I'll pick a different species or something. I don't know.
Right. So you think there's still a chance that you can go back to female again?
Yeah, look, here, I'll give you an example. It's only been since July, right?
Right.
So I went and got my roots done, because otherwise they would be gray, right? So I got my roots done a week ago, and my hair was a little darker than I was accustomed to, and it didn't have any, like, I went and I got highlights in it today.
Yeah, you're highlighted. It looks good.
That's not necessarily a female thing, but I have this ring on, which is a little female. I almost always wear my trans bracelet. You can't really see the pink. Maybe you can here, but I kind of like, and now I I have a ball coming up that an elderly woman who's the mother of a good friend of mine who passed away a couple of weeks ago. I've written a number of songs, and he is a great singer, was a great singer, and he sang on one of my songs. Maybe we could even play a little bit of that in the clip. And so she invited me to a ball. Now, this is the first ball that I've been to as a guy,
Yes, Frank.
with
Yeah.
so today I ordered like a blazer,
Wow.
a sequin silver blazer. I didn't order a black suit. You know what I mean?
No, you had me frightened there for a minute. Okay, so at least it's like got. See, I just tried to imagine you like in a black suit with a tie, and it wasn't
Oh,
working.
right. I
Right.
can't.
You got a sequin blazer. Good for you.
So she said that. She said, "Oh, she knew that I was living. She saw me as a female. So she says, "Oh, you're coming in. It's the church is giving this at this fancy beach club, the church that she goes to." So she said, "You're coming in a suit, right?" Like that. I said, "Well, honestly, Hyacinth, I'm thinking I might wear a gown." I'm holding myself back from that, but that's really where I like woke up this morning thinking, knowing that I was going to talk to you. So she went like this, she's 83. So I said, I held myself back from doing that I was more understanding of her needs.
That's
She wanted to
interesting.
show off her friend's friend, me as
Of
a man,
course.
you know.
Right.
So I'm doing that. So I went a little bit over the edge and got this sparkly blazer that when I was with her today, because I brought her, I went to show her a video and listen to an audio of her son singing one of my songs, before he passed. But anyway, so it's still coming into my life. As you know, with the Imperial Court of New York, I was with that organization for 10 years, very active
Right.
with the organization. And in the last year or two, I wasn't as active. And then I actually resigned because I was having these feelings that I was going to transition. I like to
Yeah,
say
but that
forward.
should okay, in terms of your and I texted you that, it should not affect your standing with the Imperial Court
No,
of
right. And as
everybody
I
told
learned,
you, it's like it's not your gender is not on you. It's who you are as a person.
right.
Whatever gender you perceive yourself as. The people that love you and find you authentic are it's just there. It's
And that
fine.
was when I transitioned 12 years ago to female. I had no clue how understanding, accepting, not only tolerant, but embracing the
Right.
world around me was going to be. And it was like a phenomenal
Which was,
experience.
I tell you what was interesting, because
And this time as well. This time it
you're a
was
financial advisor, and all of a sudden you made a great physical change presenting female to clients that are coming to get their numbers done. It's not like you were doing it in a theatrical world where no one's going to think twice.
right.
Okay, but
In
you do numbers
fact,
with people, and you have clients, and they had gotten used to one person, and then the other person is there who's the same person but presents differently.
right. So
But I was
it was in my head, Wendy.
right.
My
But
head,
of
it was
course,
like
of course.
trepidation of it. And it turned like two of my clients. I have about 100 clients currently, and
Credit
also
to you, really.
so I mean, some of them are very active. Some of them may just be a tax return or getting an insurance policy or some investments, But very comprehensive financial planning for some clients. But I have a lot of people. So two of the people who were in their 80s when I told them, one fella, Joe, who was about 90, he was actually about 91, 92. He said, I like you for what's in your
Thank
head,
you.
not what's
Right.
on your head,
Right.
like.
I love it.
And Jean, a woman who was at the time about 85, she says, I like you for what's in here, not what's
Wow.
on here. You know what I mean? And
And these are people in their 80s. It's great that you point that they're in their 80s and they really did come from a different time, a less accepting time. And look at how they reacted. I mean,
right.
that's beautiful.
So now this time when I've announced this, I figured I didn't know how I didn't like plan this. I like thought about it. I had conversations with a couple of people. And then before you know it, I had a conversation with my wife one night, and she says, "We're not together. You know, we're still married, but we're not living together. I wish we could get back together, but she resists that. Although we still go out now and then together." She said to me when we were on this conversation, she says, "Oh, don't do that for me." You know, she says,
Well,
"Don't
yeah.
go back to being a guy for me because that puts pressure on me and I'm not, you know, I've moved on. You know, we're soulmates and friends for life and we're
Yeah.
still married, but we're not really." And so when I had that conversation, when she said that, all of my hope about us getting back together sort of evaporated that night. And then what I did is I think I probably overreacted the next day. That evening, I called my hair salon, which was a client of mine, and to book an appointment to go in. I went in. I had, you know, long blonde hair. You know what I had, and I had it. I had a well and a piece on top because it's thinner on top. But I went in and I said to Nina, "Cut it off. Cut it all off." And that was like my first step toward.
Yeah.
And I felt like, wow, I'm not tied to gender. I'm not just a being a trans person is very, very special, but I'm not just that. I'm me, and
Right.
in any way. And so that was my kind of like instinct was to do that. And then I started. I posted up to Facebook. I got a few hundred actually responses, like very
Well, supportive.
all supportive, all supportive. So the lesson to me was sometimes I do act uh, like based on instinct and I act rather than mull things over. And in this case, I probably acted. So what happened was that, for example, Pace got in touch with me. I'm in their SP program, Standardized Patient Program. As
Okay.
a trans woman, I go in and I act for the nursing program. So instead of them dealing with just like a mannequin
Oh,
in
yeah.
their
Right. They hire actors to
they
do that.
hire out. I'm one of that. I've done it for Pace, NYU, Columbia, Cornell. I've done it for a lot of them. And so when I was called last week about it for a November date, I said, you know what? Yes, I will do that. And then 2 weeks ago, one of the plays I've written called Frankie Boy, a gangster romantic comedy about. It's similar to this other video I was mentioning, where the gangster goes undercover and the FBI forces him to go, and he's a real, you know, guy, you know, goes as a girl, and the gangster had this inherent cross-dressing thing
To
in
begin with.
to begin with, so he went along with it. So anyway, they put that up on Tiger's Heart Players acting group. I know they put it up on Zoom a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and it did well. You know, we did well. We could have rehearsed it a little bit better, you know, and with more time. But there were 10 actors and stuff. So at the end of that, I played the character, this mobster character. At the end of it, you know, I'm off screen and then I come back, I put on a wig. You know, I have a wig
Wow.
on and
Yeah.
I do my and at first I was saying I shouldn't do that because that's going to push me back into being confusing. Like people won't know what they're getting. Are you a guy or are you a girl or what, you know what? And uh I did it anyway. I did it and I got over my own concerns about that. And I'm really finding that most people, and you're the perfect example, like me for who I am, regardless of the gender.
But
And
that should be for every single person. We get all caught up
it should be.
and labels all the time, and I understand the need for them, but I also sometimes just want to throw them out the window and say, I just love you for who you are. That's all that matters.
You
It
see,
doesn't matter how a person presents,
I grew up in this Italian American, very
right. That's the
prejudiced
whole cultural thing.
cultural thing. So gender for me was women were, and I knew, intellectually, I knew better that there were very, effective, powerful women and everything, and they
Right.
weren't. My mother was very smart, though, but she was like the example of a feminine woman, and my father was the example of a masculine man. And
Right.
when I'm growing up as, 4, 5, 6, 10 years old type of thing. And those are kind of the models that in my life that I went with.
Of
It
course.
took me a long time to get rid of that. And I thought that one way to do it was to go complete. And that was part of the reason for the cross dressing. And not only me, but many, there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of cross dressers in the country. That's a huge
Absolutely.
population. So anyway, so I thought then that the best way to deal with that would be to go full time female, and I think that was right. The people that suggested it to me, I think I had an amazing. I was very, very creative during those 12 years. Then I want to point out this left brain, right brain stuff.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because were you more creative because you were female at that time, or are you as creative now? Is it more about the left brain, right brain thing and how it affects creativity? That was my question.
Binary. See, left brain and right brain. Some people, few, are fully integrated. They can combine the left brain, which is the analytical side of the brain, analytical, present-based, detail, sequential thinking. Right brain is the more creative side, lateral thinking, like all of a sudden breakthrough thinking and stuff like that, and sensitive emotions, heart.
Yeah, it's all that emotion stuff.
More brain, right brain is more heart and soul. So I was strong. I happened to be, like just some people happen to be a great swimmer, they have the aptitude for whatever the particular thing is. I happen to have an aptitude for being both left brain and right brain.
I will I totally agree. I think I met one other person that can do what you can do, and it's because of the left brain, right brain.
But like the left brain, I was attracted to being my career a CPA and a securities person, Wall Street, stuff like that, and also inventions and things like that I made and stuff like that. And then the right brain, when I was young, I was an artist. I love to draw and paint and perform, in little skits and things like that. I was writing poetry and songs early on, but I kept them in two separate silos, and I thought my strongest point, my way to make money and live and get by was the left brain for me. And so it still is that way. So for example,
you know what? You're very lucky. I talk about this whole creative thing. I talk about it with Tim Moss today, my co-host on If These Wells Could Talk.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having the creative thing. I had John Kelly on the show. We all talked. It's so hard when you're arts oriented and not that other analytical business minded thing. It's hard to create a living for yourself a lot of the time.
Yes, it is.
I have a good percentage of left brain, but I also have the right brain more, and that's what messes me up, because I can figure it out, but I never get that home run. See, because of what you can do, you get that home run. You can balance out both sides of your brain.
Well, and I should be doing more in the way of counseling people, and I'm planning to have a
how to
book, the
access
left
that
brain, right
maybe.
brain, having access that.
Right.
But what I've realized in my own life, which was an important realization, is what I would do before, I would begrudge the left side of my brain, the analytical side, because, oh, I really want to make a film now. I really want to write a song. I really want to play some music. I really want to, and I really don't like to do this tax return. I really don't like to
Right.
figure
I
out
want to
this.
sit down. It's like having to
You
sit
know?
down and do homework.
Yeah, right. So
I do it.
I used to do that before, but then in the last few years, I think with the help of me being more holistic and being female, females have there's more of an opportunity among females to bridge this left brain, right brain than
That
there
was,
are.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think that living as a female allowed you to do that, to open
Absolutely.
up those channels?
Absolutely. And then, and the very important thing is coming to the realization that it's in the left brain that I'm making the most, say, money or influence and contacts on that side. And it's in the right brain where I'm creating and I'm making lots of contacts and stuff like that in the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
brain. But it wouldn't, I'd be poor, you know what I mean? Or not poor, but I wouldn't be able to do anything. So the left brain affords me the money and
It's
sometimes the
great.
people that I
Right.
could then cross to the right side of my brain. So there are certain tricks on people who think that they're weak in the left brain, and they're not sometimes weak. You know, it's just that they just haven't sharpened that tool well enough. And there's some
So you're throwing that into my universe. How do you sharpen that tool? What's the
uh,
secret?
one way is you ratchet back into the present. The right brain people are very future oriented. Oh, you know, with this play, what we're going to do? We'll do an off Broadway, and then we'll do we'll do off Broad. Then we're gonna go on
They've got
Broadway,
the whole
and
thing
then we're
worked
gonna
out.
sell the songs, and then we're gonna do. No, you gotta pull it back to the
Yeah.
more to the present and smaller, and find what in the small is very exciting and interesting. And it may be in relationships, and it
Right.
may be that there's one song, say you're doing a musical or what, there's one song out of the 12 or 13 that you really want to focus on, and you want to collaborate more. So collaboration is a very great way to tie in more of the left brain. And if you don't have the left brain, then you tie it in with somebody else. And then through that experience of seeing how they come up with ideas,
Of course. Right.
you then follow on that.
Right. That's
So
what team building. That's what team building and working with other people. No, I
absolutely, and
never thought of it
you're
that
excellent with all of that. So uh, in any and in my own, say, I'll give you an example. In my own life, I wrote a book. It was 1,100 pages, and it was called Left Brain, Right Brain, and the
God, it
Soul.
was 1,100 pages.
1,100 pages. Who's going to read that book? It was a big book, and I was determined, and had in it a mini novel, novelette, or whatever. It had the poems. It had a how-to with spirituality thing. It had everything.
1,100 pages. My God.
Small type, 10 point.
And then it was
And
small type on
and it
top
was
of
that temple. Yeah, it was small. So now what I've realized, and people are telling me, you should have separate books. But I was on my thing, like, no, I got to have it this way because I'm trying to push this idea of this left brain, right brain combining and everything. But now what I've done is I've really come to doing it separately.
Of course.
And
And
so now I pulled
know.
out the poetry and the songs. So that's my first go.
That's the book that you were talking about. How many pages is this going to be
It's
now?
still going to be big. It's 420 pages. You know what? And some people say, well, you should put out a book about poems about love relationships, a book of poems about songs about. No, I wanted to get it all in there. And so I have my parodies. I've written a lot of parodies.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of funny parodies, and stuff. And I have poems which have morphed into songs. And then I have the songs. And then I have just the poems. So like these, and then what I did is while I was doing that, I thought, I used to go into nursing homes with this group called Poetry Caravan, and we used to talk and read poems to the residents, the 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds and stuff. And they would like the poems. They would like being read to when they understood it, And also we would read song lyrics and things like that. So after doing those, I don't do them as much now as I used to do. But what I would do is like usually once every 2 weeks or once a month, I would go to a home like that was set up.
What a great thing to share.
Yeah, it was beautiful. 15, 20 residents in the place. And then me and usually one other person. And then there were about 30 of us in the Poetry Caravan. So different people would be going to different places. So I was just so mesmerized by the experience. Like if it was a spring day and it was a gorgeous day out, then I thought of William Wordsworth's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, where he talked about daffodils and stuff. So I would read that poem and it would trigger a number of discussions and stuff. And all of that. So what I did is I wrote an email report after I did it, and that caught on, and others would write an email report about the day, that they spent, or the 2 hours that they spent with this group.
But
so I had
noticed you do that. I noticed you do that with everything. Anything you do, you send a report out.
Yeah, that's right. Well, guess what? These reports I put in this book. Because I had
oh wow,
I kept those emails because I knew someday I would want to. And you know what, Wendy? I sat down and I, because I'm in the final edits, and I found these, and I said, amazing. I'm so glad I forgot completely that, I brought my daughter to a couple of the readings. I forgot that a reading with only 2 people present ended up being an amazing reading, because it turned out that it was a mother and son who just lost their husband and father, and they were about to leave, and I was about to leave, like giving up on the assignment. And then we saw each other and said, well, let's have it anyway. And then we ended up having an amazing opportunity to share with one another. All of it,
that's called taking the bull by the horns at the moment. I have a really great clip of you. You've done so much work, but I like this one in particular because I love your comedy, and it's a very entertaining video, and I love the side of it that it shows of you. So there's a lot of people applauding throughout the video. So we're going to play that now.
Good, great, thank you.
Okay.
There's a little bit of.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to say there's just about 20 seconds of a setup.
That's fine. I think I left it in.
That they stay.
Cool. We're ready.
With it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next 3 minutes. I'm ADD. I like to cram a lot of things in. So we got a guy with a live sax. When did you last see a comedy skit with a live sax? All right, we got it. You got this.
I got it all set up.
You got it all set up. All right, we have a song for Regina. All right, this fabulous Regina Elizabeth King. You may have seen her performing around town. And Arda is playing live sax.
Hello, hello.
Art is a trans man, by the way. No, I'm kidding. And Regina Elizabeth King is going to use this mic. Okay?
Thank you.
And it's a song I co-wrote with Lee Harrison, and it tells about being transgender. How many people know transgender people? Come on, give us a round of applause. Hey, right. You know one now, right? Okay. Here we go. I know it may sound strange to you that an Italian doo-wop guy from the block would do a no-no and become a girl, but I'm not giving up a piece of me that used to be. So listen. Making a change, I got nothing to fear. I'm tossing my undershirts and my brassieres. No more tidy whities, just a red lace panty. I know I look great in something steady. Free my inner woman and be true to my soul, but I ain't giving up my Peugeot. Surely. Now I wanna live my life demurely. I used to wanna be a prize fighter, but now I just want rouge and a bronze highlighter. Holding my emotion was making it so hot, but I ain't giving up my Peugeot. Sing along. I ain't giving up my Peugeot. Somebody calls me miss. Don't call me madam, and surely not sir. I've gone from me and him to she and her. I'll rock this world. I'm on the road, but I ain't giving up my Peugeot. Oh no, say on. I ain't giving up my Peugeot.
Oh my gosh. That is so hilarious. And I've known you for a bit of time, and it's my first time seeing this.
Wow. I have a number.
First of all, as a performer, this is a great piece for you. You wrote the words, you perform it.
Let me say,
I'm assuming you put the doctor in there with the scissors. That was all your idea.
Yes.
It is really just a funny.
The essence of it was not just my idea, and this is an important point about collaboration. I started out in comedy as a result of my parents being sick, and I needed a way to get out of the depression that I was. So I answered an ad for Gotham Comedy Club, and I started comedy lessons with Jim Mandrinos there many years ago, like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And then what happened is I started doing all these mics, 2 or 3 mics a week, and I loved them, and I was getting a good reception. It was a way for me to come out as trans. So all my material was trans related. So I wrote these jokes. For example, a joke was, I'm Italian, and I'm transitioning to female, but I'm not going to give up my brajol, and that was a reference to the person's private parts, right?
Right.
To a guy's penis, right? I'm not giving that up, and then I had and all of the words in there, most of them were subjects of my jokes. I was with Kelly, my daughter Kelly. We're driving down to Atlantic City for a break. A couple of days after the show, that was at Dangerfields, that particular show. So I was doing a show, a woman named Lee Harrison calls me up. I met her a few days before at a poetry gathering that she was there also as a songwriter with a guitar on her back. I spotted her. We became fast friends. And she says, well, what do you do? I said, well, right now I'm doing comedy. She said, well, give me a few jokes. So I told her the jokes. She remembered them. She wrote some of them down.
Wow.
On my way down to Atlantic City, she says, I've written you a song.
How
Can I
cool.
play it for you? I said, of course. No one ever wrote me a song. So Kelly and I, she says, hold on, I'll get my guitar. So she got her guitar. This was in a blues version I had redone. And we edited some of it. And I put the intro in the beginning. I wrote the intro. But 90% of the song she wrote. And then I took out some of the words she had and stuff. And so she sang this while we're driving. Kelly and I are hysterical. When we got back to New York a few days later, I teamed up with Lee. We went to a Broadway Comedy Club.
Oh, cool.
To St. Mark's, and we tried the song out. And then I also tried it at the Imperial Court. There was one of my first shows there. So this gives you an idea. It was like 10 years ago. And so I have her to thank. And then also a lot. We've done it together a lot too. And she shares the copy. I share the copyright on lyric. She has the copyright on the music, but it was originally like a folk song that she did with a guitar. And I changed it to a blues song.
So wait, it was a song about your brajol, and it was a folk song?
Yeah, right. I know. It was like
Joni Mitchell, like
yeah. Well, maybe not,
brajols everywhere.
But
oh my God.
my daughter Kelly really does a great job with the scissors, like she's very animated with that.
So that was Kelly?
That was Kelly in the white coat.
Oh my God.
That was her.
My daughter is a natural comedian. She's really hilarious, but I didn't realize that. That's great.
She is. And Regina Elizabeth King is somebody who we was starting to do wedding expos, because I thought that a trans act at weddings would be great.
Sure.
So we would go to these expos. Regina has a great voice. I heard her one night after a trans conference down at the 13th Street Center, and we went out to my car, and she sang a Whitney Houston song for me. I was blown away. We started performing together, and so that's how she is asylum seeker from Guyana.
She's from Guyana. Wow.
And then Arda, I met at HB Studios, where I was taking classes with Vinny Pastore, acting classes, and he was taking classes there too.
Oh, how funny. And he plays the saxophone, which you love.
So I said, come on, maybe you could play in the show. And then he came to a couple of house parties I had here and stuff, and entertained and stuff. And so he did that, and it was perfect. It needed a sax, and needed a live music like that we played over a track, and that Frank Pisani helped me develop the track based upon Lee Harrison's original music.
It's a very, very funny piece. And to your point, one of the best ways to reach people is through comedy, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
How much of that audience do you think that you were probably the first trans person they ever met?
I'd say most of them, probably. Right. Because I even asked the question, how many people know trans people? There wasn't really a huge response to that. So it was, and then of course, I guess I should say, I feel like, I hope I'm a likable person, right?
Yeah,
so
you are.
Many people that don't know trans people, they have like this concocted image in their head. Maybe it's like somebody that's very unsettled in themselves, and maybe more drag.
Like, you should see some of the comments I read on some of the blogs on Facebook. It is unbelievable, which is why I said to you that was probably a really straight audience, and they were with you 150%. Wouldn't it be great to get that sensibility out there, because some people don't get trans. They're afraid of it. It's very different.
That was the reason for my film, Happy Trans Girl Like Me, which I've
totally, it was a happy film, right?
Shown all over with samples of my work. You know, some of it singing, some of it comedy, some of it other things. And through that, people seeing it, I can tell you, when they screened it at the cutting room, there were I'd say about 250 people in the room. It was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life, because I was in the group. They took all the tables out because they took up too much room, and they had just the chairs, and their room at the cutting room. And they pulled the projector down, and they showed films there. And that was Katrina Michio, who was the executive director. And when my film came on, people started laughing at all the right places. You know what I mean? Right. I was like sitting in the audience going like, oh my God, they got the job. Yeah, they got the job. And they were singing along. It was like a very communal experience.
I love it. But Frank, you seem to have, that's a special ability that you have. And maybe it's a left brain, right brain thing. When I saw your reading of, it's an Italian thing, it's a Black thing. Your audience, a large portion were male paisans. Yes. I'm like, right. And first of all, I couldn't believe how many that you knew, how many that were, this is where I stereotype, right? We stereotype, right. But they were all there for you 100%. Ask Francis. Yeah. And that was really a wonderful thing to see. They loved your work. They loved you, and they were there to support you.
I've been very, very, very blessed by having that. And a message to people watching is that if you have friends, family, yourself, and it's not only trans, it's LGBT, or it's being disabled, or it's being shy, or it's being marginalized and not fully expressed. When you get fully expressed and you do it in a way that you are considering the audience a little bit, at least you're giving them something that they could laugh at or enjoy or whatever, the payback is incredible. And they then realize that they could share that with the loved one that they've never been able to approach the subject of being trans with and everything. And all of a sudden it breaks down a lot of walls, and that's what I feel the most happy about, is that I feel that my body of work has really helped people a lot. And then now I feel because I lived so trans, like I was all my paintings,
totally.
I just did an art lecture. I did a special art lecture of the art of being trans, where I showed paintings and stuff, and had a conversation with the art director at an art center. I've done a lot of, and my films are films and music videos and stuff are mostly trans related. But when it was happening, there's only so many hours in a day, and I felt I was painting myself in a corner.
I understand.
Even though I loved being trans and part of the LGBT community, but I was not attaching at all with the mainstream anymore. I was losing touch with some of my long-term best friends. You must feel that too sometimes with your Triversity people in Pennsylvania, right? I mean,
no, we are, what we're about, what this organization is about, we are fiercely about community, meaning, we bring everybody in. We're all supportive. And the reason for all of us, Frank, it has to be about community, is if you look at the political situation out there right now, and the hate, and the fact that so much is unsafe, it's up to all of us that have bigger pictures to create the safe spaces and the safe relationship. And that is, what? I'll never stop doing that. That is that's
absolutely. But the reason I said that as an example about Triversity is that the amount of time that you have, you do so many different things, Wendy.
Yeah, well,
That's what I was facing, is like I only had a certain number of hours, in a week. So I found like I was devoting 95, 100% of it to trans-related stuff. And then therefore I was not doing the other things in my life. You know what I mean? And so I needed to balance that. And so now, I don't know, maybe a year from now, this idea of being a blended gender, I think I'm an okay looking guy. I can look at myself and stuff. But I like the look. I like my look as a trans woman much better. You know what I mean?
Well, again, that's the two genders that inhabit you. And guess what? We're at time. Our producer just came on. We're out of time. We could go on another hour.
Yes. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you.
Frankie Fran Sisco, you are dear to my heart as always. Thank you for everything that you're doing, creatively for the community, for just being a part of making the world a more positive place. You do that so well. Thank you so much, and for being on the show.
Anybody wants to reach out to me, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight. And you can find Francisco on social media on Facebook.
Right. And also on my website, which is still Trans Fran Sisco, spelled S-I-S-C-O.
Trans Fran Sisco. Okay. And on that note, have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.